Right. Okay. So as I was talking about last time, put that in there. So like we talked about last time, we went into the model 1, right, which is the economic model. Who in here now has their number of appointments that they need to do to hit their goal? Okay, good chunk of you. So what this goes into, this is the next part. So the MREA, this is the lead generation model. So this is the model to now fuel to get the appointments, right? So ultimately, I kind of wanted to start with saying, okay, this is the second model, right? We just talked about the first one. So the question that I have for you guys is, now that you know how many appointments, do you know how many leads or how many people in your database that you're going to need in order to get there? Make sense? So that's what we got to dive into. So I don't have a worksheet for this one. This one we're going to be talking about. You're going to need to, go through, do some different things, and think about what you want yours to look like. But like I've talked about before, being an agent is a positioning battle, right? We have this interesting aspect. So this is in the MREA, but it's cited. It says, okay, Rise and Trout cite the work of Harvard psychologist George A. Miller when they assert that the maximum number of product brands we can remember for a given category, the brand saturation point for the mind is 7. So the interesting thing is, when you're thinking about this, when you think of, okay, candy bars, when you think of cereal, I think the last time I had someone, do cereal, and they were like having a fun time saying how many they could in a certain amount of seconds, right? The saturation point is 7. So people, for the most part, can't remember beyond 7 of a certain brand. Here's the interesting part. This is big brands, right? This is going to be like, okay, shoe brands. This is going to like, there's only a certain amount that we can hold that we've been marketed to over and over. When we're talking about real estate agents, that number is drastically lower. So here's the interesting stats, and this still has not changed very much, right? I mean, this is still from the MREA very long ago, from NAR. The crazy part is sellers who go in and interview a certain number of agents, 76% only interview one agent, right? 59 on the buy side. 2 agents is 16%, and 2 agents is 22%. Between both of those, you are, almost 90 and 80% of buyers and sellers only interview 1 to 2 agents. So the question I want you to think in your mind is, okay, if the numbers say that 2 people, I need to be within the first 2 people that they think of to even have a chance, right? How do you position yourself in the positioning battle to be that person that they reach out? Ideally, number 1. At the same time, it's not too bad if you were number 2, right? Just from these stats. So that's kind of what we wanted to dive into, because the reality is, and this is from one of the bold truths that Gary Keller talked about at Family Reunion for the ones who were able to go. He talks about the path is in the math. And he said, all right, numbers don't lie. This is what he was going through, and this was from my notes. He said, success follows patterns and predictable behaviors, whether in health, business, or personal growth. Measurable progress leads to sustainable improvement. Tracking numbers, such as time spent on high-value tasks, creates clarity and accountability. So he said the path is in the math. And the reason why he goes in that is saying, hey, if you want to achieve something, then you need to know and understand the math, the numbers behind it. There's not very many things, he would say none, right, that don't involve some form of numbers if you're looking at it, right? So here's kind of what he talks about. Measure progress through data and numbers, identify key performance indicators for success, and use metrics to guide decision making. So how are we using the math that is around us, the numbers that are around us, to have the best results and build the best business that we can, right? Have the best life that we can. So here's kind of where the thought, if we were playing with numbers, if you knew, okay, that when we've talked before, that there's the whole bracket of, people that you talk with all the time, they're like very much people that you know, right? Do you think you need more or less of those people in your life to close deals? More is probably the right answer, right? But if you had to close a certain number of deals versus the people who are walking on the street that you don't know, that you're sending a postcard to, do you think you need more of those to hit the same number? A lot more, right? So this is kind of where I wanted to go in, and we're going to dive in at the end, especially on the numbers that it looks like for your database or the people that you are getting to know. What does that look like, and how many do you need to actually be chasing after to hit your goals? So this first one I have in here is you can never have enough leads. Never, right? It's the truth, right? You can't have enough leads, right? So get more. So what we're going to talk about is the habits, the systems, and the models in this for you guys to build that business, the structure that you want, and to be able to continue to improve on what you have. So the first thing is some habits I wanted to quickly chat about. Because one habit is you actually have to do the work and schedule it in your time to talk to people, right? So the first one is the 3-hour rule. Are you setting up your day where you have 3 hours a day that you are lead generating and doing lead follow-up? The second one is, are you prioritizing your time correctly, or are you saying yes to too many things that don't give you that value back? So I think of the 80-20 principle. I think of a whole bunch of different things that can say, hey, how can we be making sure we prioritize our time and get our schedule on track? Okay, I've had this conversation with a lot of agents in the past. This right here is the lead gen cycle versus your lead generation and how many deals you close. Who has ever been and felt like they've lived in this top chart? Feel personally attacked by the top chart, right? I have conversations all the time with agents, and this right here is a reality, right? You get busy. You're like, man, I'm crushing it. I just closed 2 deals, 7 deals this month. And then you turn around and you're like, oh, what am I doing next?
Talking about me, Taylor. He's standing like it too.
Yeah, this is how, yeah, I'm doing my, yeah, so good. So that first one is a conversation I do have all the time. The reason this happens is because of the inconsistency on the opposite side of the activities. A lot of people are really good when, oh crap, I need to get hired again in order to make some money. Then they're really good at talking with more people and showing up to events and doing what they need, right? Whereas that's part of that habit to say, hey, how can you be in that right spot? So that consistency of being, hey, are you prioritizing your lead gen and lead follow-up to make it so instead you're on this other one where because you're consistent, and you can see this isn't at line 0, you're not doing no consistency. That consistency is not the right consistency of no calls or talking to anyone. This is above the bottom line, right? So Jay Papasan would say you need to choose your level of consistency and intensity. So what is going to be your consistency and intensity? Is that you talk with X number of people a day, right? What does that look like? Okay, you can see by being consistent, the cool part is you'll get consistent results, and actually over time it will improve because of the compound effect. Yeah. Nonsense, sarcastic comment. Uh-huh.
It takes less effort.
Yeah, I love that. So, right? Be boring.
Be boring.
Yeah, yeah.
About this is real estate momentum.
Yeah.
Acts the same as, let's say, a locomotive.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort to get it going and very little time for it to stop because it's so heavy. Real estate's the same way. So that's why we have this, because when we start, it takes a good 90 days to get it going.
Mhm.
And so the more consistent we are, the more things will just come, like they just. It's not explainable, but it's true.
Yeah, no, I like it. And that's where I think this graph shows really well, right? It shows the amount of effort to get it going and say, hey, I did more effort, now I got deals, right? Versus, okay, if you're just consistent and what's your baseline and making sure you're doing it, you're gonna get more results out of that over time than you are the ups and downs. So, good. So that's kind of, I wanted to put that precedence of, okay, what does this look like for you and how do you create an official plan around it? We're very entrepreneurial in this room, right? The EDP would say that we need to become more purposeful around what we're doing. So we need that plan, that purpose aspect. So here's kind of the 3 key areas that we're going to talk about that it talks about in this model. The first one is prospecting and marketing. They're different, right? You have prospecting, which is you going out and communicating and talking and being in different spots, right? And I'll show you a whole bunch of options there. And you have marketing, where you usually have to pay to get it out there, right? So here's kind of what it looks like. There's a handful of different groups of people that I want to talk about. This right here is your target. So it's, hey, how do I build and have my database in a certain way that I know can go into it, reflect, and kind of look? So that very middle is allied resources, one-on-one. So allied resources, we'll talk, and I'll show you the definition. The next one is your MET group. So this is people now you have a relationship with, you've met with them, you've had this communication and built a relationship, right? The next one is the group that you haven't met that you're targeting, right? We just had a cool one recently where Phil Jones was showing and being like, man, you need to get very specific and see what questions that group of people that you're targeting would actually want to know and hear, right? Don't be too generalized, understand what they're looking for. And then the general public, right, that you haven't met. What is that group that you're targeting and what are you doing there? So here's kind of the definitions of each of these. The first one, allied resources, it's your closest circle. These are people that either A, are going to be doing a deal with you in a year, or will refer you deals that year, right? They're your advocates. They're your people that are very much like, no, they're like, you and them have that relationship that you want to make sure that you don't lose. This is where you need to be regularly making sure that you can have more one-on-one, actual face-to-face kind of conversations. If that's monthly, if that's quarterly, how do you build and have that relationship of those key people? I see a lot of people in their databases, they'll call this like their sphere A+, right? Or their VIP list. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can create to say, what does this one look like? Then you have the MET group. This is everyone in your database that you have built a relationship, and I would say probably kind of enjoy, right? Like, so it's people that you want to have that constant communication with and you want to build and stay in touch with. And this is what we're going to talk about is the 8x8 and the 36 touch. So we're going to talk about that in detail of what that looks like in order to stay with this group. I would very much, of course, say that your allied resources need to be on the 8x8 and 36 as well, but they need to have even more, right? That's where that kind of comes in. Okay, the next definition is your target group that you haven't met. So this is a specific group of what you're focusing on, right? That's the cool thing with the podcast that just came out this week. His focus was very much on a certain age group. He focused on 65 years and plus. And his whole thing was very much about how do you build a system around a target group to make it so that they have what they need for their problems that are coming up. So his big thing is they teach classes and they invite anyone to come to the classes about, hey, here's the 15 places that you can go to. Here's the 3 different options. And he basically gives them that plan, knowing that he is that piece for saying what is the next step for them at that phase. Really fascinating. Lots of different ones, right? But that's where it's what is your target group? And then the last one is the general public. So this is you broadcasting out. This can be a lot of the times a mixture of social media. This could be kind of your branding, your awareness, a whole bunch of different things can fit into that. And how do you touch as many people as possible? Is that like you sending a postcard out to this big group, right? Tons of different things. 12 Direct is a marketing plan where you're sending out some form of postcard, mailer, something once a month, right? 12 touches. We'll go through and say, show what that says. And then prospecting and marketing, right? Prospecting is active reach out. Marketing is passive reach through what you're doing, what you're putting out there. Okay, so back to this. Your goal is to generate leads and move more and more people into the middle. Fair enough? So here's kind of the different ways prospecting and marketing, and this is just an all-encompassing list. There's, of course, a lot more that could fit into here because, of course, this doesn't have social media, right? Social media didn't exist when this book came out. At the same time, the concepts are all very much there the same. Prospecting, you can go through and do different ways to call, talk to people, do things that way. Advertising, right? You can go through and there's a whole bunch of different ways, and there's even more now as well, right? Of course, either one, make sure you're TCPA compliant, right? Don't call people who don't want to be called, right? But go for it. Go talk with more people and kind of put yourself there. Here was kind of one thing. I teach a lot of times, and I've talked with a bunch of you about the Ford method when you're communicating. This was a great one that they were going through and talking about in detail. And it's basically it's educate your people about real estate whenever you're having a conversation or whatever you're putting out there. Give them some information about what's happening. Ask for help. Say, hey, I have a goal. I want to help this amount of people. I want to do this. So asking for help and then making sure you reward. You're not telling them you're going to reward them. That's one of the rules inside of real estate, right? The broker's going to be mad if I say that. But you can reward people for activities of doing things. So here in the book, and I love this, it specifically says that you need to reward people for the action, not the result. So if somebody gives you a referral and you then go close the deal, that's not when you should go and send them a thing saying, hey, thank you so much. I loved closing with your friend. I think it's not bad to do that as well.
The day they send it.
The day they send it, how do you create some form of reward that they can get, that they can say, man, like, oh, I just got a, $10 gift card to this, or, oh, I just had crumble cookies show up to my house, right? Yeah.
I think it's a referral maybe a month or 6 weeks ago to one of our technology partners.
Oh, sweet.
Scottsdale. And all I do is just send off an email to one of my contacts there and say, hey, this is my friend. Get a bit of everything to talk to. It was like 3 days later, all of a sudden I had like an express package at the office that was like full packed or whatever. There's like some treats in it. There was a boss card that said, thank you so much for your referral to Ryan Redford. We really appreciate you trust us, whatever. I was like, yeah, but
yeah,
you're right entirely that like whether or not my friend ever ends up doing business with these guys or not, like I am now like they want me to refer the business. They appreciate that.
100%. Which I love. I love that you had experience recently of doing that with someone else. So thank you, right? Because it's a big difference when you can then create that experience. And it's funny, but that's what it says in the MREA is that you need to treat the referrer better than the referee. Did I swap that? Right? The person who gave you the referral, treat them better than, did I swap it? I don't remember. But treat the person who gave you the referral better than the referral that they gave you. I mean, you need to go help that person get it done, right? That's their expectation. At the same time, how can you make sure to have spoiled that person who sent you someone and given you that opportunity for the business? So I liked that, wanted to reinforce it, because if you're saying, hey, how do we move more and more people into that center of saying that we have that relationship, they're on top of mind, they are that allied resource, right? Someone that we have, then let's make sure that we're continuing to build a system and elevate our game. So, okay, next part is now that we say, hey, great, we now understand what this looks like, who we're wanting in our database, what we're going to do to some degree, how we're going to get them. The next part is making sure you have a database and feed it. So the cool thing is a lot of you have a CRM, right? It's weird.
Oh, command.
Yeah, you have commands, right? So you can use it to set it up and have your database so that you can feed it and create systems around that so that you're consistent. And that's what we're going to talk about. And that's what this is right here. So when a contact is made, you now build a relationship. The very first step, and we're going to dive into what this could look like, is an 8x8, right? An 8x8 is, there's a bunch of ways you can do it, right? Really, all of this is tweakable, but the concept is it's 8 touches over 8 weeks. It needs to be, to some degree, touches that will make sure that they remember, have that communication, and kind of go through that. So that could be your communication touch of saying, hey, here's a gift card, or hey, here's a market report on your house, or hey, how are you doing? Right? Even the communication of saying, hey, this is how I I appreciate blah, blah, blah. I want you to be in my network and help me out. I work mostly through referrals. This is what, the best way to help me get a referral. And I always appreciate that, right? Whatever that is, to build that relationship so that they can remember what that looks like. Make sense? So you can see, then they go into your big database of people that you're staying in touch with. It can be, first of all, the 36 communication points. It's 36 times throughout a year, averages out to be 3 a month, where you are communicating in some form or fashion with those people, right? That's going to be a mixture of emails. That's going to be a mixture of events. That's going to be a mixture of phone calls, right? We talked about this a few weeks ago where I pulled up and had the 7 levels of communication and said, hey, how can you get more of them closer to the top of that pyramid, right? Top of the pyramid is one-on-one interactions where you're actually with them in person, right? How can you get more of that? It could be pop buys where you go and you swing by with some corny little thing, but it's like also kind of fun and it gives you an excuse to go to their house. And if they're there, you got to see them. If they're not, then you leave it, take a awkward selfie of showing that it's right there and saying, missed ya, right? What are these ways that you are building and having it so they remember you? And again, this positioning battle that you are the number one person that they're going to call. And this is a cool graph because then it says, okay, great, repeat business, right? This is how you get referral business. This is how you get the new business. All of it goes back up and around and back into this so that you continue to feed that. Any referrals that you get go into an 8x8 and go into this. So see how that system works? The biggest, hardest part with this is doing it, right? The 36 touch is very much something that if you set it up, a lot of them can be very easy and done in a well. The 8x8 is something that you can do. You just need to go either use one of the smart plans in command or have it so you have a method and a system around what you want it to look like. And to some degree, I would say that anything is better than nothing, right? Because if they see the email that has a little bit of information and it has your name, that's probably better than not having an email, right? At the same time, getting that down so that you have it in a good form and fashion to not only impress them, but have that in a good spot. So people will need to be added regularly as you make new relationships and lose old ones. It's natural, right? So here's the thing, feed it, fatten it, but whatever you do, don't put your database on a diet, right? That's very much with your database kind of side. You want to make sure it's growing and making sure that you have it in that way so you can have that best spot. Okay. And this is kind of one of the interesting parts around that. So we have this database. We've now put them in. We have all these name and numbers. In the MREA, it talks about, and Gary Keller goes through one of the experiences. He says, he's like, man, I went in for one of my regular checkups at the dentist. Went in there already. It's been, of course, the 6 months or whatever. And he sits down in the chair, and someone he doesn't know walks up and says, hey, I'm glad I'm here to help you out. Da, 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 da. And he realized, he's like, man, the database that the old doctor had who retired was his sellable asset for the new dentist, right? In real estate, that's the same thing. Your database and how well you cherish it and nurture it and make it so that it's there is a sellable asset. And there's different ways to do that. So when you're thinking about it, how do you create your database? Not only it's your data bank, it's where the deals come, it's where you keep on having things, but how are you creating it in a way that is legitimately a sellable asset for you to pass on to that next phase? Okay, your database is your business. That's it, right? Okay, so the next one is, and this goes into what we just talked about, but it's now that you have your database, you have it set up, it's what are you doing to systematically market to them? So here's kind of the 3 different ones, and we've talked about them briefly, but I want to pull up what it kind of looks like. The first one's the 8x8. We did talk about it, right? It's 8 different ways, 8 things that you're doing to make sure you are building and cementing that relationship. So here's one of the options they have. Week 1, drop off a letter. Week 2, send a receipt card. I always think those are funny, but do what you want, right? Right. To say recipe, receipt? Yeah, well, it's all there. Week 3, right? Okay, do another thing like that. Have a calendar. Have something that's keepable. I always think that's a fascinating one. I see a lot of people who have, like up north, they do their BYU versus Utah, and it has the calendar, but it also on the side has their information, and it's a magnet. It's right. Different schedules that you can do that you can also then just slap yourself on so that they can remember, right? What's something that you also, I mean, I wouldn't do that if you don't care for sports, because then you get what I'm saying. But you figure out what you can do, right? 4, make a phone call. 5, send a free report. Hey, here's what's going on in the market. 6, send them a real estate investment or house maintenance tip. 7, there's a refrigerator magnet, something that's usable, that's not going to be thrown away. Week 8, another telephone call, right? Talk with them. So that's the 8x8. It's how are you cementing that relationship to build it? And then doing with that with anyone who enters your world, right? If they're now entering into your world, how do you go about saying, hey, this is us, we're over here, hi, right? Like, but now they remember and say, you at least now hopefully have moved into their top 2 or 3. Okay, send memes, 100%. Memes solve everything, right? Right? The next method is the 36 touch. So this is what we just talked about. Here's the example. Okay, 18 touches of some form of email or something like that. 8 touches of, thinking of you, thank you cards, memes, whatever it is, right? You're systematically doing it. 4 touches of phone calls. I would very strongly say, hey, you should have at least that in your regimen because it's up higher on the 7 levels of communication, right? Very important. 2 touches, birthday cards. 1 touch, Mother's Day card, Father's Day card, right? Home anniversary or what. So you need to create that system of what it looks like. The reality is with a lot of you, especially right when you add in social media and everything like that, you could easily be up to 100 touches with these people, right? Well, if it's social media and they just see your account, then they see your account. That is a touch. But here's the thing. You can't always guarantee that they're going to see everything that you put out in that way. Guarantee is the strong word there. You're going to see quite a bit. But that's where I'm like, what is your system of saying, hey, you have a minimum of 36 touches, and what does that look like? The last one is the 12 direct. So the 12 direct is where you are sending out to usually a farm, a group of people, something where you're sending out marketing material to them once a month. I always talk about this is a 50-to-1 ratio. So when you're getting it out, like you need 50 people in that in order to get one lead, one kind of deal from it. And it does take time. It takes between 12 and 24 months for a 12 direct to start working. So the thing is, you need to make sure that you budgeted way ahead. Because if you're like, I'm going to do this and send out, 15,000 cards every single month for the next 2 years, make sure that you have the money already set up so that you're not calling quits in 6 months and then it was not productive, right? So as we talked about at the beginning, the path is in the math. So I kind of wanted to wrap this up with how the math looks like and for you to have a chance of saying, okay, where am I at and what do I need to do to hit my goals? So this first part is kind of where things are at. And I've talked about this before. If you do an 8x8 into a 36 touch, within a year of being like, great, they did a whole 36 touch, you should be able to be at a 12-to-2 ratio. So every 12 people in your database, you should be able to get 1 referral and 1 closed deal, which would equal 2 deals, right? So it's a 6-to-1 ratio if that bothers you math-wise. But yeah. So the other side is a 12 direct. So people that you don't know, how many people are you going to have in your database or what you're doing is a 50-to-1, right? So if I have that, here's how the math works. I have a couple options. 3. The way I see it is 3 of 3 options, right? You can, 1, have it where you can have people in your Met database. This is going off of, okay, if it, like we said last time, it takes 320 cells at what they talk, 250, so on and so forth, to make $1 million, right? You would need 1,920 people in your database on a solid 36 touch to close that amount of deals. And that's 0 in the Haven't Met database, right? Or option 2, you can have the way the math works. You can have 16,000 people that you're sending postcards out to and having that database, right? And then you can close 320 deals, right? The next one is your third option. You can have some form of mix. You can have not only the people that you have who are the center of your circle, right? And they're giving you and doing that business, but then you can also have a Haven't Met that you're doing to continue to do that. Mela?
Is this based on the MREA book, or is that based on what it would take now to get $1 million versus 320?
Good question. So this is based on the time and numbers that they gave in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book of 320. If we did the numbers here, it's not 320 deals, right? You're going to be basically half that. Because in reality, we're not 250 median price point, right? We're closer to 500 something price point. So that's having your team going through all of how it looks, kind of what it is, right? To make $1 million in that way, Millionaire Real Estate Agent. But I wanted to show you this, not because I'm saying, hey, great, all of your goal needs to be to go close 320 deals, but it's to say and have that conversation with yourself of that reality habit of checking, where am I at? Where are you at on a solid, like your Met database who are on a 36 touch? How many people do you have in there? Is it adequate for you to hit your goals? Right? How many people would I need over here? Right? Gary Keller in the book would also say, I mean, hey, you probably should always aim high, right? So if your goal is to close number of deals, how can you do the math? So not only you have in your Met database enough, but you also have the same amount over here, right? So the easiest way to make sure that this team, this Figment team that we're talking about, to do 320 would be to have 1920 in their database and 8,000 and 16,000 in their database, right? Because now you have both. That would be the easiest way to make sure that you hit that, by making sure you aim high with kind of where things work, right? Questions on that? So here's the thing. The way I see it is you really do have three options, right? You have one option. You can have come here, you could have listened to this and taken this information in and said, great, I'm going to now reflect on this and, you know, see kind of where what I can improve. But after you leave this room, do nothing about it, right? Option two, you can go say, hey, I'm going to schedule some time and put it on my schedule, maybe for next week or maybe for in 2 years, for me to look at this and kind of do what needs to be done, right? Or three, you can go through and say, hey, this is worth me looking at. I'm going to go through and look at where I'm actually at and have someone in the room that you're returning and reporting with. So you can say, hey, what does my database actually look like? And am I in the spot? Or what do I need it to look like in order to hit my goals? So you can have that reality habit where you know your numbers enough to have that conversation and at least now know where you are, right? So for you guys, what for you would make the most sense for you to hit your goals that you wanted and talked about last week? Okay. So, you know, the way I see it, you guys are a bit like me, right? And you guys very much enjoy that process of pushing yourself and growing and saying, hey, I'm not going to be done where I'm at now, right? How can I improve and get more of my time back or more money, right? So I think you know, going through that process and having and setting up that time to really reflect would be important. So I appreciate you guys. Hopefully that was helpful. Some of you, you know, I know were very angry with early comments, so I apologize. No, just kidding. No. But you guys are awesome. So go make it happen.